Hello, Matt. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you, Robert?
I'm very good. First of all, Blackberry, fantastic movie. Absolutely loved it. What a joy to watch. So, congrats on your excellent movie. And to link into that, my first question is: so, a lot of your previous projects, like the Dirties, Operation Avalanche, the Nirvana, the Band, the Shore, kind of like this fake documentary style, which I think which you've kind of pioneered over your career. So, how was it like trying to like adapt that style that you've kind of worked with years into a more traditional cinematic movie?
It was very challenging, mostly
Mm-hmm.
because if you notice, a lot of the explication that I try to do in my work
Mm-hmm.
involves characters directly addressing the camera.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's such a useful tool for storytellers. And all of a sudden that was gone. And I was like, how the
Mm-hmm.
fuck am I going to do this where these three guys can't turn and talk to the audience in a way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it meant that I needed to do a lot of, I'd never written a script before.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd never done anything close to writing a movie before. And so I kind of needed to find ways to put this stuff into the script, into characters' dialogue with my co-writer, Matt Miller. And it was a total, like, I had to learn how to make movies again.
Mm-hmm.
That's the answer. It's like I had to completely teach myself how to make movies from the ground up. And thank God, Jared Rabb, the cinematographer who shot everything I've ever made,
Yeah.
was much more competent at figuring out how to make the camera move and work and how to integrate those same documentary techniques into this fiction space. So I leaned on him very heavily.
Yeah, because when I was watching the film, because like I tried to go in as blind as possible with movies, because I think that's the best way to enjoy it. And I thought, like, is he still doing the documentary style? When it's revealed, it's not. Like he's like, I thought instantly you nailed that transition, because like that's it's instantly because the way the camera moves, it's just so amazing to be. It's like, and working into that's like you have like even with the fake documentary scenes, you probably have a lot of tension. But like, how do you make something that is quite nerdy tense, because like it's about
Mm-hmm.
like the network, and how do you make when like oh, the network's crashing, how do you make that like intense for the audience, and like how did you go around making that like really engaging?
What I hoped would happen is that after Act One and
Mm-hmm.
seeing like what these guys came from and what they were like as friends, you would start to feel their tension as things went badly. And it was just a kind of hope that I had. It's why I wanted to spend so much time with those engineers and
Mm-hmm.
Doug at the beginning of the film in sort of low stakes situations because they have a kind of low stakes life. Like nothing
Yeah.
really matters to them and things are going to be okay whether they, lose their modem deal with US robotics or not. Like their life is going to be fine because they're used to like eating cereal for breakfast and
Yeah.
having no money, right? They're kids. And so I thought that if the audience liked those guys in Act One, then by the time things started going bad in
Mm-hmm.
Act Two, they would understand why it was bad. Because you're completely right. A network failure on a cell phone is, who cares, right? Like the
Yeah.
network's down for a day, big whoop. But for them, it's like the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, so yeah, I'm happy that worked.
Yeah, and like linking into that, it's like I did a computer science degree. It's like kind of like a background, so like and like I've done some like networking stuff, and it's even like me who's like spent 4 years going to university still goes, don't fully understand that. So how did you, as like a writer, like make sure that like convey those in a way that like anyone can understand no matter their background? Because that's an achievement. It's like, and especially when he goes like this is how we're gonna get it to work. So it's not like 10 phones, it's this many phones. Like how did you make sure that like everyone could understood, and cause it's very technical, all the sciencey stuff behind it.
Well, I talked to a lot of people who were working in the cellular space in the 90s. One
Mm-hmm.
guy in particular named John Lyon, who ran a telecom communication, who ran a telco in Thunder Bay, Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
And he explained to me, because I'm quite stupid, he explained it to me in very simplistic terms what Blackberry did in
Mm-hmm.
order to create the first smartphone, which is essentially they created a massive computer system that was in charge of all of the relays coming in. So all the emails, like when you got an email on your BlackBerry, it didn't go to your BlackBerry. It went to Waterloo. And Waterloo would get the email and be like, okay, Robert got an email. And then they would push it. That's where that term push email comes from. They
Mm-hmm.
invented push email, which is that a server gets an email and then pushes it to a user so that smartphones didn't need to be constantly connected to the internet, constantly draining on the network. And when that was explained to me, I just kind of got it. And I was like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
I understand that. And so that's just how I have Mike explain it in the script.
No, that's really fascinating to hear because like it is really difficult to understand networks. It's not simple as like, and like watching the movie, I'm like, I get this. Like, it all clicked even from me, and that's something I like to link into. Is like, was there ever like upon doing research for the film for writing the movie, was there any like a story that you hear that you were shocked that was true that you kept in the movie, or like shocked you learned in general, or something that just kind of interested you when bringing the story to the screen? That you're like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, you know what? I would say this is probably an answer you could imagine, but every moment in the script, whether it's Jim backdating the stocks, whether it's them doing all that insane hiring of American and
Mm-hmm.
international engineers, Mike inventing the storm in a meeting, those like the things in the movie literally are the things that blew me away. So what
Mm-hmm.
you're watching is a collection of all, because Research in Motion they had thousands of things happen to them. Look, they were one of the original companies to be sued for patent infringement. That's not in the movie. They got sued for like I think $1 billion for infringing on people's patents. They're one of the first patent troll victims. Like crazy shit happened to them. But the things that I thought were the most interesting are in the movie. So
Yeah.
so that stock backdating, I was like, I can't believe they did this. It's insane. They were paying these engineers millions and millions of dollars in illegal stock. And I was like, I can't believe that they did that. Like, it's because they had no money. They're this tiny Canadian company and they needed to have the best engineers in the world. And so they went and got them illegally, which is fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And then also the idea that Mike Lazaridis sees the iPhone and his reaction is, okay, I'm going to put a keyboard on a screen on a keyboard, which
Yeah.
is just so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like that to me is another one of those I can't believe that that's true moments. The fact that they left the prototype in the cab during their first big pitch to
Oh,
Bell,
that's
like
real. Oh,
dude,
jeez.
like all the big moments in the movie are completely real. All that
Yeah,
stuff is real.
that's wild to because like like, and you'll understand. It's like a lot of people take civil liberties. Like Argo is a good example with the airport scene.
Right.
Like they make major changes to that because to make it more dramatic, and you would instantly assume leaving in the cab is like a lip. Like we're gonna make it
I
add
know.
drama, and
It
now
seems
you
so
saying like
ridiculous.
you're like, oh, that's real. Like, oh,
It's
that's
100% real.
uh-huh.
And it happened exactly that way. They were going to the meeting. He left it in the cab, and then they had to do the whole pitch without it. And then at the last second, they showed up with
Oh,
the prototype at the last second.
that's amazing. And to kind of like bounce off that was like the stuff for like the movie night also real, or is that something that you also like? Because you're a big film person, and like your character kind of like still represents you in a way, like with the whole
Right.
movie references. Is that like something that you added, or was that something like
It's a
somewhat
bit of
grounded
a
in
split.
reality?
Well, in the book, it talks quite candidly about how obsessed the early staff at Research in Motion were with movies generally.
Mm-hmm.
What's so weird is that Mike himself, this doesn't come off in the movie as well, but Mike, his favorite movie was Raiders of the Lost Ark. That
Mm-hmm.
was just his favorite movie. And it's why Raiders of the Lost Ark is like at the beginning of the film. It's why that final shot of him fixing all the phones is kind of like stolen from Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like there was a big movie culture. And I thought, okay, maybe we can combine that with what I know to be true of engineers in the 90s, which is that they were very, very, I know it's a cliche, but like the early internet was mostly Star Trek forums,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that's what the beginning of the internet was. And like early LAN parties, early video game culture, like I know that these things were happening at
Yeah.
Research in Motion. So I basically just took that as a starting point and then added as much from my own life as I could.
Yeah.
So that type of cultural movie obsession is coming from me, but the general culture, no, is basically
Yeah,
the same.
because it's really fascinating because like watching it like now, this is in the early 2000s, and it's like how they always did movie night, and to think that like that was viewed as like a bad thing, like you're not working, like you gotta be like work, but now viewed it more in this lens, that would be viewed as more of a positive, like a good positive like work culture, and like no, you need to
Right.
take breaks
Google.
from work, and like
Yeah.
you need to have a healthy relation, like and not overwork, and and that was quite fascinating to watch. Be like that's kind of like ahead of their time, even if it like just being like a more chill office environment compared to this whole like we must work 80-hour weeks and stress and be yeah, it's really fascinating. That's just it's a really great story, and it's I think your style fits the best to adapt it because you know you're I know you did like an animated show quite recently, but like the last thing that I watched was Nirvana the Man the show from
Yeah.
you, and seeing you go from there, which is more like the I know it's not quite, but it's like kind of like that Jackass where like you mess with like the people to this.
Yeah.
It's
It's
like
very low, very lo-fi.
only, but I want to talk about because Jay from the Random Band Show does the soundtrack, if I'm right. And
Yes, he
how
does.
is that important to make that soundtrack work? Because there's moments in the movie where the soundtrack hits and it's like you're just bobbing away, like this is you're just like yes, let's just go.
Well, Jay's a genius,
Mhm.
and he's like my best friend, basically my brother. And he was the guy who said I should make the entire soundtrack using analog sounds from phones and modems in the 90s. And
Yeah.
so almost all the instrumentation that you hear is him sampling from modems and 90s touchtone set telephones.
Oh.
So I mean, I basically just left it to him. He and I love music and movies,
Mhm.
and I would just sit on his couch and he would play music, and we'd listen, and we kept playing with the score right up until the premiere, basically. In
Yeah.
fact, we still might change a few cues.
Yeah,
Truth be
because
told.
the soundtrack's incredible. Because there's like moments where you're just like this just bobs, and that's really interesting to hear how it was inspired to score. And it's interesting because you talk about your love of movies,
Mm.
and that comes on like in the first episode of Around the Band the show as well. If people have seen that with the whole you kind of soundtrack the opening with like this is how we're gonna introduce everyone. But kind of like my last question, and you're a movie buff, so it'll be interesting to hear. So Scotland is known for its rain. It's known as like a rainy country,
Oh,
and
really?
yes, and so kind of like what I want to ask is you're at home, it's a rainy day, and you're stuck at home. What is like your go-to movie just to put on to relax and have a good time?
I'm unique in this way, I think, and that's that. I really hate watching movies that I've already watched before.
Mm-hmm.
Like I very rarely will watch a movie again. So my honest answer is I would find something I hadn't seen
Mm-hmm.
and watch. I've got a long list of movies that I'm trying to burn through. But to play into the spirit of the question, I think movies that I could watch over and over again and just love are the film I Heart Huckabees. Believe it or not, that early David O. Russell film. I think it's his third feature. I
Mm-hmm.
love that movie. I can watch it over and over again. The performances are unbelievable. Every single line said is funny. The Disney animated Robin Hood. I know forwards and backwards. I know every line of the film. I could recite it from memory,
Mm-hmm.
like the entire film. I think I've seen it 100 times. And the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the 1989.
Nice.
Those three movies have had a huge influence on me,
Mm-hmm.
and I have seen them more than any other film. So
Mm-hmm.
that would be the answer.
But yeah, thank you for talking to me, Matt. It was an
It
absolute
was great to
pleasure.
meet you, Robert.
Yeah, thank you so much.